Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. It is 9:05 a.m. This session is set to go until 10 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. In the boardroom is Vice Chair Ty Menser. Also, we have Commissioner Gary Edwards joining us via Zoom, and he'll be in the boardroom shortly. As will I. We have Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder joining us for this session, as well as staff from Community Planning and Economic Development and Prosecutor's Office, as well as our outside counsel, Ken Fellman, to talk about the wireless update briefing. And so, Ashley, am I passing this to you?
Yeah, thank you. So today's briefing is a follow-up on the wireless code update, which is Development Code Docket Item A19. And staff today are going to be providing an overview of the request by the Board of County Commissioners relating to setbacks and public notice standards. And so I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. So the two remaining topics that we have to kind of really iron out left are setbacks and public noticing standards. And based on some conversations that we've had amongst the board with Commissioner Menser and our legal staff, we've developed a kind of fill language that would allow and address these setback concerns that have been brought up to an extent. And so my thought process behind this meeting is that we kind of do a roundtable again, where we kind of just go down the list of the remaining topics and discuss amongst the group and hopefully make a decision or provide direction to staff to kind of go back and figure it out. And so to kind of start with, I wanted to provide a graphic for everyone to see. It is going to be the map that I provided a couple meetings ago. And let me share my screen real quick. There it is. So what we have provided related to setbacks is going to be a new standard, a new language as shown in the AIS, and that would involve requiring that small cell facilities being located on a property be located at the corner point between two lots. And what that would essentially mean is that for where the mouse is pointing, you see the mouse, yeah, right there. The small cell would be located there, and that would allow for the front setback to be matched as well as the two side setbacks. And based on the conversations that we've had, we have developed this language, and our consultant Ken Fellman has said that this has been a common kind of language addition that people see within their codes to kind of address that concern. And so with that, I'm just going to open it up for questions, and we can just kind of bounce back and forth.
Okay, questions. I'm just going to open it up. Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
Andrew, if it goes right on the corner on a property line, does that mean that the applicant has to get permission from two property owners to accomplish that particular requirement? I guess, you know, if it was within 3 feet of the corner, that would allow them to only have to deal with one property owner. I don't even know if I'm making myself perfectly clear. I'm kind of waiting to hear what Commissioner Menser has on that, but that's my question. Thank you.
So this would primarily focus on so kind of stepping back, if this was located on a specific parcel, it would have to comply with the standards of that specific zoning district. This also would address this language being located within the right of way. And so let's just say it's on the street, it's not tied to one specific parcel or another, it's just right in the road. But if they wanted to place a small cell there, they would have to place it at the center point between both parcels at that point. And Ken, obviously you can probably explain this a little bit better than I can, but
center point between both parcels, what does that mean?
Is it possible to maybe zoom into that illustration so it would, because it'll be easier to see the lines.
Let's just use this as an example. So if the small cell was to be located within the right of way, it would have to be at this line and set within the right of way. Essentially being,
This line, I'm sorry, what are you pointing at?
it's the property line separating the two parcels. So the white line on the map is the property line for each of the specific parcels. And if the small cell was to be located within the right of way, it would have to be located directly aligned with that center line in the right of way. It couldn't be placed directly in front of any specific parcel. It would have to be located at the center point between both parcels in the right of way. Does that make sense?
Can I make a suggestion here?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and sorry to jump in like that, but I think Commissioner Edwards makes a great point. And I've done it in the past where it's been right on the line, but it will create more flexibility if your regulation says something like within 5 feet or within 10 feet. The key policy thing we're trying to accomplish is to not put these things right in front of somebody's picture window or bedroom. And of course, most residences are not located right on the property line. So if you're close to the corner, that's going to protect the view as much as possible. And while these are public utility easements and they have a right to be in the public utility easement, if you're within a certain small amount from the line, then you're really only impacting one person's property. And it gives you a little flexibility because in some cases you may want to be right up at the line, and in some cases you might want to be a little bit off of it. I have not discussed that with staff previously, at least in that detail. So I don't know if that is problematic for planning staff, but I wanted to raise that as a possibility that might give us more flexibility here.
Thank you, Cam.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
We can include language in the code that we can address that. And we can do that either today, or we can bring that back at another meeting, or if the board is comfortable moving forward with that addition, we can bring that back for a final action.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely support this new piece. I think it's helpful.
Is Commissioner Edwards in the boardroom?
He just walked in. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I saw that you jumped off Zoom, so I was trying to figure it out. Any thoughts on the proposal?
Well, I probably missed about the last 5 seconds there of council's recommendation. I heard him say that he kind of agreed with me. I guess what I'm wondering about is I'm just trying to, if the utility outfit needs to put a little battery pack or a little building there or something, I'm just trying to make sure they don't have to deal with two property owners at some point. And I don't know if they get to put a utility building in the right of way or if it would have to be on an individual property owner's place. I heard him say like within 5, council said something about maybe 5 feet, within 5 feet might make sense. And I believe that's kind of what I intended to articulate. I didn't do very good, I think, but anyway.
So if it's within 5 feet of the center, the common property line, then it basically would be located within the setbacks of the property line.
Except if if the property line comes out and it's right here, if it could be done that way, if a utility shed was needed. I don't know if they need one or not. I just hate to have an applicant have to convince two property owners, I'd like to do business with you. And so some way around that, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
And I would say most of these situations that this code would address are the small cell ones that wouldn't really trigger one of those kind of facilities. If that facility was required, it would most likely need to be located on a specific parcel, which then the additional setbacks that apply to that specific parcel would then trigger. So you wouldn't have to worry about dealing with two different property owners. This is just those small, like arm length type cell towers that you see like attached to buildings or poles and whatnot.
So this is.
Yeah,
referring
there might be a need for some kind of ground equipment, but it would be in one of those small little cabinets that could either be buried or, you see them when you drive around. They're not really that big. They're not buildings, but they're just, a couple of feet up from the ground. The other thing to remember is that these are in public rights of way or in public utility easements rather. So oftentimes the utility easement will extend beyond the pavement onto someone's property. And so it's an important thing to do to give notice to the property owner. But if it's on a public utility easement and that easement extends across the property line, just like they would have a right to run an electric line or put up a street light if that was appropriate, this is within a public utility easement, and your design guidelines that staff is working on is oftentimes going to say you've got to put the equipment on the inside of these poles. That's another reason why you won't need a structure on the ground. So as Andrew said, if it's a macro site, a bigger tower, if somebody wants to put up a 50-foot, 60-foot tower, they're going to need to lease private property to do that, and they're not going to be putting that in a utility easement.
In that particular case, council, would you need to get cooperation from two property owners if we require it to be on the center line? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have some distance. It could be 5 feet, it could be 10 feet, whatever
Just
you're
some
comfortable
leeway of
with
some kind.
from the property line. Then you're going to end up giving notice to both property owners because both of them deserve to know that there's going to be a pole put up either right, on the corner of their lot or next to their lot. But again, if it's in a public utility easement, they don't have to sign off on it. They may say, I don't want it there. And the utility still has a right to put it there.
I guess I'd just rather have one citizen upset than two.
Right. And that I'm agreeing with you, Commissioner, that it makes sense to have a small amount of a small footage number from the property line so that the pole is on the corner of the property. It's not in front of somebody's house, but it's on one person's property, not straddling two.
So based on kind of the conversation that we've heard thus far, we can go ahead and develop code language with the addition of that flexibility and bring that back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with that. The only recent communication that I have here, and we all got it, and it's from one of the members of the stakeholder committee that served, was basically appreciated the addition of this provision. But before we leave setbacks, I just want to kind of put a bow on this or something, but her comment was essentially that to have no required and specific minimum distancing measurements defined from homes is truly unconscionable. Now, in the law, the word unconscionable is a term of art, and it's a very, very strong term. So, I mean, maybe she didn't mean it in that way. Maybe she meant it in a more like colloquial way. But to say that to me as a former attorney is kind of just, and not just from some random member of the public, but someone that actually served on our stakeholder committee, really just, it hurts me. I'll just be frankly honest. To think that somebody would feel that we're doing something to do something that's unconscionable in the law is to do something that no reasonable person could ever think to do something like that. It's just shocking and appalling, and I mean, it reaches that standard. So I'm still just concerned that we're doing the best thing that we can do under the law on that issue. And I'm maybe 80% convinced that we are, but I still have a part of me that has an unresolved concern. So I don't know, Ken, maybe I'll direct that question to you. I mean, is there anything that we haven't done that could be done to address that concern expressed by that member of our stakeholder committee?
Right. Well, as far as setbacks go, and I'm not nearly as familiar with how residential properties exist in the unincorporated parts of the county as you all are. But generally speaking, it's not as dense, and homes are usually further set back from the streets than they are in the more suburban developments. So in the image that we're looking at right now, you could do a 25-foot setback and still be pretty comfortable. I was in a city last week where the citizens were suggesting a 250-foot setback, and it was a suburban community, and staff put up a graphic where they had every streetlight identified in the city, and they did a circle of 250 feet around those, and they showed that you'd only be able to locate these things in about 3% of the land of the city if they were to do that. And even at a 50-foot setback, in that case, there was over 60% of the city that would never be able to be served. But where you have more rural residential development, if you felt like it was important, and if you felt comfortable that 25 feet or 30 feet or whatever the number is, would be something that would be doable and manageable, that the homes are usually set back more than that, then I think you could do that. I understand the citizens' concerns, and Commissioner, I understand your concern about the term unconscionable. I know, I'm with you. I know exactly what it means. It's a big allegation. Even if she did mean it in the legal sense, though, I mean, that's why we have lawyers. I would respectfully disagree with her.
Yep.
And say, I don't have a feeling that no setbacks would be unconscionable, primarily because we don't require them of other kinds of utility poles or streetlights, generally speaking. And these are analogous kind of requirements. And again, we've talked about, we can't regulate based upon health effects. I'm sure one of the reasons for setbacks is that people are concerned about health. But I think from an aesthetic standpoint, if you wanted to impose a setback requirement and you came up with a number that you felt would not prohibit the ability of these poles being placed on rights of way in county residential developments, if you're asking, can we do a little bit more? That's one more thing you could do.
So let me ask this, can we do, I don't know who can answer this, but could we do, could we leave it the way it's proposed for the UGAs and then have a 25-foot or, whatever kind of for outside the UGA? Is that permissible? Or where the zoning is, because you do have urban styles zoning and density within the UGA, and that's going to increase over time. And I don't want to create the situation that Ken described where, you draw in circles and you've just invalidated, because I don't think that's legal. I'm very convinced that you're correct on all of that. So would something like that be a compromise? Keep what you guys have designed for the UGA, add a little bit of protection in the rural area, which should be easily to manage in the less dense zoning.
I think that could be an additional, I don't know if it'd be an exemption, but it would just exempt it from following this as outlined by the code, and then just have an additional 25. I would have to take a look at it just to make sure. But we can take a look at that to see if that's a possibility. Ken, from your knowledge of the ordinance, do you think that is feasible?
Yeah, I think it's feasible. I'm not as familiar off the top of my head about your UGA requirements, but conceptually what I'm hearing, I think would be feasible. It wouldn't be too hard to fit into the draft that we have now.
And just to clarify, that is only for the small cells located within public right-of-way that we've been discussing? Okay.
Yeah, let's be really clear on that. We are only talking about small cells located in public utility easements in or adjacent to the rights of way.
And the minimum setback, is that from the primary residence on the site or any residence on the site?
I'd make it from it's a policy decision, but again, we're looking at what most people are concerned about. I'd make it from the primary residence, and I'd make it from the front of the structure, right? So like not a setback to the property line, but a setback from the location of wherever the pole is being proposed to the, closest point of the primary residence.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
Ken, what do municipalities do in this case? Where, Commissioner Menzer has suggested that maybe have the UGA somehow a bit different than the rest of the rural county. But what do municipalities do on this setback issue? Do they have an ordinance that covers this as a general rule? I mean, what, I'm trying to get consistency between the municipalities and the UGAs myself, but that's a separate point. I'm just curious, would you know the answer to that? And the reason I'm asking.
Sure, yeah,
is-
Commissioner, I can give you my, based on my experience. I've probably worked with and writing these codes, maybe 75 local governments over the last 3 years since these small cells have really become big deals in multiple states, including in Thurston County, the city of Tumwater. And I don't know of any, I've never seen a municipality impose setbacks from the residents except for one community in New Jersey that I worked with. And in addition to the ones I've worked on, I've talked to my colleagues around the country. As you know, in this case, we got a lot of information about, well, what this city in California did this and Langley did this. And so I've talked to a lot of my colleagues about this too. When you are in a suburban or urban area, it is next to impossible to have setbacks that would apply because the homes are much closer to the street surface. So the only time, in my opinion, I think that even a small setback would work is in a more rural development. So anyway, I would say the rule of thumb is you don't see setbacks for small cell poles in suburban and urban areas.
Okay, and just if we did a 25-foot setback, then wouldn't that end up being well outside of what we would consider the utility easement area? And then there'd have to be that negotiation with an individual landowner?
But I don't think so. I'm not, I may be misunderstanding your question, but I think the pole itself would still be placed in the public utility easement. So, just in the image that we're looking at right now, I can see the pavement of the street, and on that lot, where Andrew has put the orange line, it looks like the street surface ends, and it looks like there's some landscaping in there. And what I'm envisioning is perhaps the public utility easement is wider than the pavement surface of the street, so it extends into that landscaped area. And so there's going to be a pole in there in a public utility easement. And if you impose the setback requirement, it would have to be 25 feet from the nearest point of that primary residence. So I don't see the pole being outside of the public utility easement. It would still need to be within the public utility easement. And you want to come up with a setback that is going to work based on the kind of development that you have in residential areas today.
And on this diagram, well, just real quick, on this diagram, the 25 feet, because you've got it marked in red, I mean, it would be a non-issue on any of these properties.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
In some areas, the setback to build a building, I think, maybe that applies to a house as well, could be like 5 feet from a property line. And so then we start getting into conflicting issues, don't we?
So the 5 feet
Yeah.
would actually primarily be only on the sides and rear. There's no 5-foot front setback. The minimum, I think, for a local street is 10 feet. And then for arterials and collectors, it pretty much goes up 20 feet and then 25 feet.
I guess I was wondering about that side position. So I think you're allowed up to 5 feet from your property line. And if you had to be set back, I mean, could you then be creating a new dilemma? I don't know. I think of the word unconscionable as, I mean, if you applied that to a lot of the things that we do through code regulatory process, I think most of it falls within that category to some people, depending on how they're impacted. So I don't know that we can ever, I don't think we'll ever make everybody happy on the whole thing, so. Okay.
I don't
thank
think
you.
the 25 feet is gonna make certain folks happy, but I'm willing to try it based on what Ken said. And the way it would apply in the rural area differently than in residential zoning in an urban growth area.
Does that sound like something?
Yeah, take a look at that.
That's gonna be fairly easy to incorporate the way that it's structured right now.
I'd like to hear the chair's point of view though, before we move on.
Thank you. I was going to jump in. Thank you for the conversation pieces, right? And Commissioner Munster, thank you for that idea. I'm in support of exploring that idea for sure and seeing if, it looks like from what Ken said, it's something that can be incorporated and it gets us at least halfway there. So I'm in support of that. Yeah.
So moving on, the second part that was still needed to be addressed was the public noticing, and the board did direct us at a previous meeting to look at an administrative policy to address public noticing and a kind of phased approach to allow for us to transition from our current permitting system to a SELA whenever that day may come. And so what staff has done is provide a draft of our administrative noticing policy, and that noticing policy pretty much goes into two phases. First phase would create a new wireless communication webpage, which would have information related to the different types of wireless communication facilities and kind of what expectations go with those facilities in public engagement, as well as a notice of application that would be mailed to adjacent property owners upon receipt of an application, very similar to this little postcard letting them know that we have received an application, and that would go to property owners within 300 feet within the UGAs and then 500 feet outside the UGAs, very similar to our current noticing standards, and contain just general information on the proposal, as well as just standardized language on why they were receiving it, and a disclaimer that there is no public comment opportunity with this. This is just a simple notice of application. Upon the successful implementation of phase one, or phase two, which is the SELA permitting system, we would discontinue the mailed notice and incorporate a live permitting map that would, as soon as we receive an application, update the map and have all of the current permits that are under review as well as any completed permit that we have. And so those, based on the conversations that we've had with the board, have developed our administrative policy around that.
What was the third piece there? I'm sorry. You had the web page, then you have this postcard with the two different parameters, and what was your third thing?
An interactive map that will show all permits that are currently under review for wireless, as well as any permit that is completed. And that map will contain not only the administrative permits that is the onus for this administrative policy, but also any of the hearing examiner related wireless facilities as well.
So I know part of that, sorry, is there questions or comments on this before I jump? Okay. I know part of the mapping was based on a new program coming in, and as we all know, that keeps getting delayed. So like, how would that just like fit?
And so this administrative policy pretty much follows that permitting system. So whenever that whenever that magical day does arrive, when we get that up and running and we're starting to use it, that's when that permitting map, and obviously we would probably wait a little bit to make sure all the kinks are worked out in the system and that the GIS data is transferring easily, but once we know all of that is working, we would then begin that transition to that website. And that website would be updated to truly encompass everything that this postcard is, as well as information explaining the interactive map. So there's no set deadline of when we would transition. It's really based on when we can get it up and running.
And at this point, I would imagine we don't quite know if it's a static map or one that would be constantly fed as permits are, or if they'd have to be updated.
It would be fed as soon as the permit is received. It's probably would be, if anywhere, a 24-hour turnaround cycle, but then it would update the map showing that permit, as well as the status of that permit.
It's gonna be a really, really good tool for
It'd probably be
community
something we're gonna bring in
engagement.
other groups.
I can live with that.
I'm good. So I guess based on what we've heard today, we will bring back some language that incorporates a potential flexibility with a 5 to 10 foot variation from the corner point, as well as the 25-foot setback for the rural area. And based on the conversation, would it be appropriate to bring it back for a final action and have it reviewed during agenda setting?
Yeah, or would you like another briefing to review that language?
I'm good enough to go for it now, I think.
Yeah, let's move it forward.
Okay.
It's taking so long. I'm sorry.
And you'll be
Part
able
of
to
that's my
act on
fault,
this
but-
one immediately. You won't have to wait till
Oh,
the end of
I
the
do
year.
have one question on that. Do we run it like, at our hearing yesterday, we ran into a timing issue problem that maybe we were gonna have a problem?
Nope,
No,
you
okay.
can, this
So
one
this
you'll be
one
able
we
to
can
adopt.
do?
Comp plan.
It's not a
Yep.
comp plan change.
It's development code.
Okay. Okay, I'm good.
So I will bring it back on the 31st, and
We'll move from there.
yeah, we'll have the final action set for the 31st. And so in a couple weeks, you'll have some information for you.
Halloween.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 9:37, we are adjourned.